Hey, in today's lesson, we are looking at 5 differences between formal and informal English. This lesson will help you understand the difference between the two and when to adjust your tone. Let's go. First of all, knowing when to use formal or informal language depends on different things. It depends where you are, who you're speaking to, and what you're doing. And at work, it depends on your industry, your location, and your company's culture. So why exactly does this matter? Choosing the right level of formality helps you to sound polite, professional, appropriate. It also helps you to avoid misunderstandings and to establish rapport and build relationships. One of the main differences between formal and informal English would be vocabulary. Generally, when you want to speak more formally, you're going to use longer and more complex words. For example, instead of saying this is good for you, we can replace the adjective good with the word beneficial. This is beneficial. So a simple change like good or beneficial will change the level of formality of that sentence. Another example would be the phrasal verb put up with. Put up with actually means to tolerate. And generally speaking, phrasal verbs are more informal, more natural in conversation. They're more casual, right? So instead of saying, I refuse to put up with this, you could say, I refuse to tolerate this. Now, both of these statements are absolutely correct. Nothing wrong with them. One is a little more formal when we use tolerate, and one is a little more casual or conversational when we use put up with. Another very common example is the verb need. We can make this more formal by using the verb require. Okay, so what do you need or what do you require? And something else that goes along with vocabulary would be abbreviations, acronyms, and short forms of words or phrases. So for example, ASAP, this stands for as soon as possible. Or we can shorten the word advertisement to advert, or even more commonly, ad. Or the word photograph can become photo. So generally, when we use the full word or the full phrase, this is considered a little bit more formal. And when we use abbreviations, acronyms, or short forms, this is considered a little bit less formal. Now again, these are very small changes to vocabulary, but when you make these small changes throughout your speech or throughout text if you are writing, they will change the overall tone and the overall formality of your message. So vocabulary is the first notable difference between formal and informal English. Next, we have grammar. Now, generally, we use longer and more complex structures when we want to communicate in a more formal way, and shorter, simpler sentences when we want to communicate in a less formal way. So, for example, we could say, "What is this?" A very simple, straightforward sentence. Or we could say, "Could you tell me what this is?" Okay? What is this versus could you tell me what this is? One sentence is shorter and simpler. This is a little bit less formal. It is not informal. It's still a very neutral sentence, but we can make this more formal or more polite by asking it as an indirect question, which is another grammar point. An indirect question would be, could you tell me what this is, please? Okay? Or would you be able to tell me what this is? Another example would be the sentence, sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry for the inconvenience, okay? So a straightforward, simple, short sentence. We could make this more formal by making it longer and a little more complex. So we could say, please accept our sincere apologies for any inconvenience this may have caused. Please accept our sincere apologies for any inconvenience this may have caused. Now, a sentence like this is appropriate and common in business or professional settings. You could either say the sentence verbally or you could write it in an email. Another example of formal versus informal when it comes to grammar would be the use of contractions. Now, contractions, if you don't know, are when you combine two words to make one shorter word. For example, I am becomes I'm. It is becomes it's. Do not becomes don't, and so on and so on. These are contractions. So it's very common and natural to use contractions in your speech, in informal and casual speech, and in informal text and writing as well. However, if you are writing a formal document or anything official, you want to avoid using contractions because in formal pieces of writing especially, contractions are considered to be informal. So for example, we are not able to provide what she is looking for at the moment. There are no contractions in the sentence, and if I include some contractions, it makes the sentence a little bit more casual. We aren't able to provide what she's looking for at the moment. Now, the difference between these two is very minimal. And when you are speaking, you can absolutely use contractions even in formal situations, even in formal settings. This point is specifically for formal writing, okay? So keep that in mind. If you are writing a formal email, a formal report, a formal essay, or an academic essay, any piece of formal writing, you want to avoid using contractions, but it's totally okay to use them when you are speaking, even in formal situations, because they are a natural part of pronunciation. Our next point is pronunciation. Now, there's not a huge difference here, but generally, when you are speaking formally, we tend to speak a little bit slower, and therefore we pronounce things a little bit more clearly. And when we are in an informal, casual, or social conversation, we tend to speak faster, sometimes a little less clearly, and we tend to use more slang and informal expressions. So think about any professional speakers that you have heard. Think about the pace at which they speak, the pauses that they use, the way that they emphasize words to make their point stronger. These are all part of the features of pronunciation of formal speech, and they do come with some practice. Now, a great tool for you if you are trying to improve your pronunciation, whether formally or informally, is to record yourself speaking and listen back to it. It is very difficult to be aware of how you actually sound at the moment you are speaking. So recording yourself is a fantastic tool. It also helps to make you aware of your pace. Are you speaking too slowly? Are you speaking too quickly? Are there too many interruptions? How is your fluency? All right. So try recording yourself if you haven't done it already. I promise you it's very, very helpful. Another difference between formal and informal communication would be some idioms and expressions. Now, there are so many idioms and expressions and phrases and sayings in English, and some are more appropriate or more common in formal situations, and some are less appropriate and less common in formal situations and more suitable for casual or social situations. So knowing the difference, knowing what idioms and what expressions are more formal or can be used more formally, and which are more casual or social, will really help you to be able to choose the right tone, again, depending on the situation. So for example, the phrase, I have no clue. I have no clue. This means I don't know, but it's quite informal, okay? So you could say, I have no clue who he is. It means I don't know who he is. A more formal way of saying the same sentence would be, I am unfamiliar with him, or I do not know who he is, okay? I am unfamiliar with him. I do not know who he is. More formal. And less formal, more conversational, more casual, more social is, I have no idea who he is. Okay, so you can hear the difference in tone between these two statements. The meaning is the same, just the level of formality is different. Now, an example of an idiom that is very commonly used in formal professional situations would be to raise the bar. Now, to raise the bar means to increase a standard. So for example, you might say, they've really raised the bar with this new product launch. They've really raised the bar with this new product launch. It means they have raised or increased the current standard. They've improved the quality. And there are some idioms that are useful for both formal and informal situations. They're neutral, they're versatile, and you can pretty much use them in any situation. For example, to be on the same page. To be on the same page can be used formally or informally. And this just means that you have the same perspective or opinion on something as someone else. You basically agree on something. So for example, you can say to a friend, I'm really glad that we're on the same page. Or at work, you could say, let's make sure everyone is on the same page before we go ahead with any changes. Let's make sure that everyone is on the same page before we go ahead with any changes. So this point is a little bit tricky. It takes a little bit of time to kind of wrap your head around it and understand it. It does take practice because some idioms are more formal, some idioms are less formal, and some idioms can be used in any situation. So this is just a matter of understanding phrases and idioms in context and understanding when it is appropriate to use each one. And then of course, putting that into practice in real life until it becomes natural to you. And next we have your word choice and your overall tone. So this refers to the words that you choose to use to communicate your message. So see if you can hear the difference between these two statements. I am writing to inquire about the status of my current application. I am writing to inquire about the status of my current application. Or, I'm just checking in on my application. Any news? I'm just checking in on my application. Any news? So both of these sentences have the same message. They're asking for the same information, but what is different is the word choice and the tone. Obviously, the first one is more formal and more appropriate for an email, and the second one is more appropriate if you are checking on your application with a friend or someone who you are very familiar with, someone who you know, and most likely you're just verbally asking them this question. Another example of this would be, please be advised the meeting has been rescheduled to next Monday. Please be advised that the meeting has been rescheduled to next Monday. Compared to, hey, the meeting's been moved to next Monday. Hey, the meeting's been moved to next Monday. Now you might be wondering, okay, so which is better, formal or informal English? Or you might automatically assume that formal English is always better because you sound more advanced, you sound like you have a higher level of English. However, that is not the case. In reality, one is not better than the other. Formal English is not better than informal English and vice versa. Instead of trying to memorize how to be formal, what you need to do is focus on learning how to adjust your formality and how to assess the situation and to decide when to be a little more formal and when to be a little less formal. And a good starting point for that is to observe the other people involved in that situation. How do they communicate? How formal are they? What is their relationship? What is their connection? How do they sound to you? Okay, and you can start off by mirroring that level of formality as a starting point, okay? Unfortunately, there are not black and white rules for this. It does come with practice and it does come with experience. I know that a lot of people strive to speak more formally, communicate more formally, because they think it is more advanced. However, it is not always appropriate. Even at work, depending on the culture of the company and the nature of the company, the industry, and the people who work there. Okay, so keep these things in mind, that one is not better than the other. Instead, you want to practice effectively communicating formally, neutrally, and informally, assessing the situation and working on how to adjust your tone and how to get the right tone. That is the skill and the tool that you really want to focus on. And if you would like to learn more about formal and professional tones and how to get your tone right, this is a topic that I cover in detail in my Essential English for Business course. That is a self-study online course that teaches you the fundamentals of business English communication. I will link the course down below so you can learn more. If you enjoyed today's lesson, make sure to give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment to let me know, and subscribe so you don't miss future videos to help improve your English communication. I also have a free ebook for you, English Conversations Made Simple, that's linked down below the video. Thank you for watching, learning, and spending time with me today. I'll see you very soon in another one.